Yeah.
Hello, I'm Lacey, and this is my third and final speech of my Communications 103 class, and this is my persuasive speech, so I'm doing it on HIV and why we shouldn't fear it. I know there's a big misconception out there still, so I wanted to educate some people on it. And I have my audience here with me. I have Jessica, she's one of my fellow nurses at the HIV clinic we work at, and Q, who's operating the camera, and then her son Dylan, and of course Tess, but that doesn't count as an audience member. In my book it does. So we'll start with the first slide, and it just talks about what HIV is. So HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, and it's the virus that causes AIDS. And a lot of people have a misconception that AIDS, you get AIDS automatically when you attract this disease, but that's actually not the case. You start with HIV, and then if your T cells dip below like 200, then you're considered AIDS. We'll get into that later. And how the virus is transmitted is through childbirth, sexual contact, or breastfeeding, or bloodborne pathogens. And then this next slide just shows the mechanism of HIV and kind of how it's transmitted through the body. So HIV attacks what's called your T cells, and these are known as your helper cells, which help you to fight off infection and stay healthy. And this virus actually, it goes after those and kills those, and your body has a hard time fighting the virus because what it does is it attaches to your RNA, which is right about here, with the T cell's DNA. So it replicates and changes, so that's why we've had such a hard time years past with trying to fight the virus and figure out where it came from and what it is and why a lot of people thought it was cancer of some kind. And so the way the virus is now, things have changed so much that we have ways of fighting off the virus and people can live long, healthy lives. But as the virus goes on, the compromised cell starts replicating, which is what I just talked about, and slips out of the infected cell. And in the same way, the virus particles attach to other T cells, and a lack of T cells greatly weakens your immune system. So this is how you get pneumonia, this is how you get even more sick, and you have opportunistic infections and stuff like that. So the next slide, where did HIV come from? It actually started in sub-Saharan Africa back in the 1970s, and it didn't actually come into the United States until about 1979. And it was first begun seen in gay and bisexual men, and so that's why it had this big misconception, and it was called the gay virus and all of this stuff, because that's where it was predominantly being transmitted through. Initially, it was transmitted through chimpanzees. People were hunting and around their blood or using their blood, and then that's how they would get HIV. And then this image below here kind of shows it still predominantly is in Africa. This is from the World Health Organization, and this is predominantly United States, and this is Africa, and it's still very prevalent in Africa, but it has obviously spread to other areas of the world. And like I said, how HIV is spread through sexual transmission, and some of the obvious ways to prevent that is abstinence, which is 100% effective, or you can use condoms. And there's also a thing called PrEP, and that is pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is a form of HIV prevention that a lot of people, so for example, in my clinic, we have a lot of HIV negative partners with their HIV positive partners, and so we put a lot of them on what's called PrEP, and it's basically you take what's called Truvada. It's a medication, HIV medication. You take that prophylactically, and then that helps to fight the virus so that you can't get it. And then also with our patients that do have HIV, they're also on these medications or other types of medications. And our goal is to help them build up their T cell count, their helper cells, like I mentioned earlier, so that they can fight the virus, live very healthy, long lives. They can't transmit the virus to other people. And then we also like the viral load to be undetectable, so you can't transmit it to other people. So PrEP, PrEP is only given to people who are HIV negative. It's not called PrEP if you're HIV positive. That's actually called ART, which is antiretroviral therapy, and that's what I was just mentioning, where you take the medications on a daily basis, you take them religiously, and you can live a perfectly normal life. So the prognosis of HIV, it's not the death sentence that it once was in the early 80s, late 70s when it first was discovered. People live perfectly normal lives. Where I work in my clinic, we've seen a progression of people aging with the virus, so that's kind of cool to see. And people actually, you know, live until they're in their 80s, 90s. They die of other illnesses, and HIV is not even the reason why they pass away. So it's not the death sentence once thought it was. Your life's not over. You know, a lot of people, when I tell them what I do for a living, they always are like, aren't you afraid that you're gonna get it, or isn't that a little scary for you? And to me, I'm surrounded by it every day. I'm educated in it, and so that's why I wanted to do this speech, is to educate everybody else that it's not something to be afraid of. Use the proper precautions, take care of yourself, and if you do have the virus, you know, you want to have good nutrition, exercise regularly, take your medications regularly, and you'll live a normal everyday life. And believe it or not, the virus actually is just part of who you are, and you live your life. You can still work, you're not disabled, you can still, you know, date and have a family, and you can still have children. A lot of our patients, they have families and kids, and are perfectly happy. And so that's why, you know, there's so many misconceptions of it. And with the development of ART, the antiretroviral therapy, that's why we've been able to make such big strides with this and move on and not be so worried about it, because these medications have changed the way we do everything. And when they first came out, they were terrible. There was AZT, which had tons of side effects and made people extremely sick. And now, over the course of 20, 30 years, so many medications have come out that have completely changed everything. And you take them once a day, you don't have to take them multiple times a day. There's not as many side effects. And what's also nice is we're able to, you know, do genotype tests to find out which strand you have, so which medications will work. So there's been tons of advances in the therapy of HIV and, you know, diagnosing it, and it's not the scary disease that everyone once thought it was. So at this point, if anyone has any questions from my audience, I'm happy to answer them. And like I said before, you know, just eating healthy, exercising, having a good diet, no smoking, you know, get your flu shots, get your pneumonia shots, because you are susceptible to other illnesses, because you are immunocompromised. It's not a scary disease, it's not a death sentence. You know, you'll live a perfectly normal, awesome life. So I hope this makes sense to everybody, and I hope that it kind of educates more people out there on HIV and AIDS. And as I mentioned earlier, AIDS is when your T cells, the helper cells I mentioned, go below 200. Then you're considered to have AIDS. And again, those numbers can go back up. You'll always have AIDS considered, but that number can go up and you still can live a normal, perfect life. So I hope that helped with everything. And if anyone needs any questions on HIV or wants to understand the illness better, there's an awesome book that we actually give to all of our new patients in our clinic who are newly diagnosed. And this book answers all your questions, and it puts your mind at ease. Thank you.